Well, hello and welcome to day 4 of what I think is one of the most important and most special weeks of the year, the week leading up to Easter. So far this week we've been using some Easter eggs, some special Easter eggs, to explore the true story of Easter. And we've seen on the first day that Jesus came riding on a donkey the week before Easter to show that he was God's special king come to save their people. But then we saw in our second Easter egg that one of Jesus' special friends said to the authorities who didn't like Jesus, if you give me 30 silver pieces, I'll help you arrest Jesus. And then our third Easter egg reminded us that Jesus knew what was about to happen to him. Jesus knew he was about to die, but he knew his death meant that we could be friends with God forever. So he gave his friends a special meal to remember. We might call that now the Lord's Supper or Communion, to remember what he did. And then we saw how Jesus went to the garden and he prayed. He prayed to God to help him through such a difficult time. And then yesterday, in our next Easter egg, we saw that Jesus was arrested. And when he was arrested, the soldiers whipped him. And we see that they teased him and they made a thorny crown for him and put it on his head. And then they took him up and they nailed Jesus onto a cross where he died. But we also saw this was all part of God's plan. We saw that Jesus died so that we can be friends with God again. You see, we saw that all of us go against God, and the Bible calls that sin. And because of sin, we can't be part of God's forever family. But we saw that Jesus died on the cross to take that punishment. So if we trust in him, we can be forgiven. We can be part of God's family again. So let's see what's in our Easter eggs for today. Well, our first Easter egg today, let's see what's inside there. Now, this is a bit of a surprising one. That's right, it's a dice. Why would there be a dice in the story of Easter? Well, remember before yesterday we said God told his people hundreds of years ago it was going to happen for his special one. And we read part of the Bible called Isaiah, which was written hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus. There was another part of the Bible called the Psalms, again written hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus, which explained what was going to happen to God's special one. I'm going to read to you from a part of the Bible called Psalms. I'm going to read from the 22nd Psalm. I'm going to read verse 18. It says, they divide my clothes among them. They throw dice for my clothing. You see what happened when Jesus was up on the cross? Some of the soldiers started throwing dice to see who could get his clothes because he had this nice piece of clothing and they didn't want to rip it. So some of the soldiers started throwing dice to see who would get his clothing. And what that shows us is that God already knew what was going to happen. Jesus dying on the cross wasn't an accident, but it's part of God's forever big plan to make us friends with him again. Now after Jesus was on the cross for a few hours, Jesus died. He cried, the Bible tells us he cried out, it is finished, and then he died. But to make sure he was dead, the soldiers came along with a big spear. They came along with a big spear, and they put the spear in Jesus. And the Bible tells us water and blood came out of his side where they speared him. And that shows us that Jesus was really dead. He didn't just faint. He didn't just pass out. But no, Jesus really, really died. On that cross, Jesus really, really died. And then some of Jesus' friends came. And they took down Jesus' body. And they wrapped it up in cloths. That's what they did for dead bodies back then. And they took it to a tomb, sort of like a cave. They put Jesus' body in that cave. But then some of the authorities came and said to the big boss, they said, some of his friends said that Jesus was going to come alive again. Maybe they're going to take his body and pretend that he came alive again. So the big boss said, why don't you get a nice big stone and put the stone at the front of the cave or the tomb so that when his friends come and try and steal the body, they can't. So we know that Jesus is dead. See, at Easter times, particularly Good Friday, we remember when Jesus died. We remember that Jesus was whipped, he was teased, he went to a cross and he was nailed to that cross and he died. He really, really died there. But we also remember God was still in control. It was all part of God's big, big plan. Now that's all I have for you today. But I hope this has made you think a bit more about who Jesus is and God's big, big plan about how we can be friends with him forever. And I'll see you tomorrow.